I looked at these things and it didn't look like humans to me. I looked at this, and these were actual, you being a doctor, you understand, autopsy photographs. And they were, still photographs of autopsies, but they had the organs out. And I had a little bit of medical knowledge, not a whole lot, but I had a little bit of medical knowledge and looked at this and I said, doesn't look like a heart or doesn't look like a lung. But what we found out was, and true, that these Ebens had just one organ that was made up of the heart and lungs. It was just one organ. I think there was September something of 47, and the case wasn't a case number that I recognized. So then I asked, and eventually I got a briefing by a scientist who was a medical doctor. He was from the Armed Forces Institute of Pathology in Washington, D.C. He came out, and myself and the other agents that were involved in this, he briefed us. He gave us basically anatomy 101 of an extraterrestrial. And he said, yeah, in fact, these are the autopsy photographs from Corona.
Do you know the names of any of the other agencies or project code numbers or code names that were associated with this subject back in that era?
DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency, was intimately involved in it. Everything that we sent up everything we sent up to OSI headquarters went to DIA.
Okay.
And the way it was operating and the way it could lift up by itself, we watched it. It had to be. I don't know what else. I'm not a technical guy, but I could look at it, and just common sense tells me this thing was anti-gravity. Now, but I think that craft was an actually alien craft. I don't think that was a reverse engineered. There's two different complexes out there. There's one that I believe Lazar was talking about with the alien crafts, and then there's an entirely different area for the reverse engineering craft. They're not together at all. They're not in the same hangar. They're not next to each other. They're in different locations. The underground crafts, the underground facility housed the extraterrestrial crafts. The above ground facilities in the far end of the complex housed the reverse engineered aircraft. They had the bodies of all sorts of different types of crafts that they were manufacturing or testing, that he put together and tried to fly it. Had a lot of crashes out there. So a lot of these things didn't work, but they had those. I believe it was 1981. There was a scientist who died, an Air Force scientist who passed away, and he had an old Army footlocker full of autopsy photographs, and these autopsy photographs were of the creatures that died in the Corona crash. And so we went out to recover all this stuff. And I looked at these things, and it didn't look like humans to me. I looked at this, and these were actual, you being a doctor, you understand, autopsy photographs. And
George, basically what we're dealing with here is, I'll give you the bottom line.
Okay.
I'm not trying to sell it.
I want to hear your thesis.
I'm not trying to sell a book. I'm not trying to promote a lecture. This is based on what I've come across after intense research in the last year. And I have found out that the government has retrieved between 10 and 15 actual flying saucers, 3 of which have been in perfect condition, 1 of which they tried to fly. They have between 30 and 50 alien bodies in cryogenic storage. We even have the name of the person whose job it is to show these bodies to the heads of state and the people who are authorized to see them. They represent at least 5 different civilizations. Now, the picture that we have of the big head that the Air Force describes, this picture was drawn by an Army surgeon. These are one of the bodies that was recovered in the famous Roswell incident of 1947.
Tell us about that.
It was the first flying saucer that crashed and was recovered by the Army. It was covered up. There has been several books about it. They recovered 4 beings, and one of the surgeons that was responsible for the autopsy drew that picture and came up with some of these interesting things in the autopsy. I'll just read a couple. 3.5 to 4.5 feet tall, 2 round eyes without pupils, no earlobes, nose is vague, neck described as being thin, arms is described long and thin, reaching down to the knee section. You can see that there was a webbed portion in the hands. No teeth, no apparent reproductive organs. Brain capacity unknown. Colorless liquid prevalent in the body without red cells, no lymphocytes. And there's more in that particular report.
This is an autopsy report.
The creatures were approximately 4 foot. They had didn't appear to have any ears. They had an indentation for the nose, very, very big eyes. They had a really tight-fitting suit, almost looked like they were nude, but they actually had a very thin but tight-fitting suit on. The fingers had no thumbs, just four fingers. Suction devices on their tips of their fingers.
They definitely weren't humans as we know humans, but they could be from another planet. Or the doctors were explaining this, that they couldn't be from our planet. They had to be an alien, or had to be something else, but not in our planet. Well, the ears, like I think I stated to you, that the ears, there was a couple of small orifices, one on top of the other, with 2 little lobe flaps, one over the other. They didn't really know how those, if they had any significance, how they worked or what. They didn't go into that. The nose was only a couple of very small orifices, holes right there, just above the lip line. But it had, there wasn't anything covering it. And it was just like 2 small indentations there, and that was it. Said it was very unusual. Now, there wasn't any thumb. None of the bodies had any thumbs or anything. That were just long, very fine, very delicate fingers, no fingernails. But right at the tip of each finger, it looked like there was a pad. And in this pad, it looked like it might have had very small they were like little suction cups, but very minute suction cups. The doctors, that's the way he explained it, that was looking at it.